The old silo stood at the far end of the farm, away from the house and away from the barns where the animals stayed. It looked like a tall, tired tower made of metal that had lost its strength. Rust covered most of it like a dark orange skin. The roof was bent and broken, and the sides had long lines where the metal had split over many years. When the wind blew, it made a low sound around the silo, as if the place was trying to speak but did not know how. Most days, Rafik tried not to look at it, but the silo was too tall to ignore. It stayed in his view whenever he worked the fields, like a reminder from the past that he did not understand. Rafik was a farmer in his early 30s, with rough hands and quiet eyes. He lived alone now. His parents had passed away, and the farm had become his full responsibility. He worked from sunrise to sunset, fixing fences, checking water lines, and caring for the crops. The land was not rich, but it was steady. Wheat, corn, and vegetables grew well if he treated the soil with respect. He did not chase big dreams. He only wanted a simple life where the farm stayed safe and strong. But the silo was no longer safe. In the last 2 years, storms had become harsher, and the old metal had started to shed pieces. One night, after heavy rain and strong wind, Rafik found a sheet of rusted metal lying near the path where he walked every morning. Another time, he heard a loud crack and saw a small section of the wall fall inward. He imagined the silo collapsing one day without warning, and he knew it could hurt someone, or damage the fields, or block the waterline. It was a risk he could not keep. He remembered how his father always warned him to stay away from the silo when he was young. His father would say it was dangerous, and that the floor might not hold weight. His grandfather, who had been alive when Rafik was a child, never spoke about it at all. When Rafik once asked why the silo was not used, his grandfather's face became tight and distant, like a door closing. He simply said it was old and not needed. Then he told Rafik to go wash his hands and help in the kitchen, as if the question was not allowed to stay in the air. Now, years later, those memories returned as Rafik stood beside the silo with a shovel and a crowbar. The morning was cool and quiet. A soft fog sat over the fields, and the sun had not fully warmed the ground yet. Rafik took a slow breath, then started working. He removed loose pieces first, careful not to pull too hard. Rust fell in flakes. Dust rose and settled on his clothes. He kept his movements steady, as if patience would protect him from surprises. As the hours passed, the silo began to open like an old shell. Rafik peeled away damaged panels and dragged them to a pile he would later take away. He expected the inside to be full of old grain or broken wood or nests. Instead, he found mostly emptiness. The inner space smelled stale and dry, like trapped air. Still, something about it felt strange, as if the silo had been kept separate from the rest of the farm on purpose. By midday, the sun was bright. Rafik wiped sweat from his forehead and stepped inside the half-open structure. He focused on the floor, which was covered in packed dirt and small stones. He planned to clear the base so he could safely remove the remaining walls. He pushed his shovel into the ground and lifted a thick layer of soil. The sound that came back was not the sound of dirt. It was a dull knock, like wood buried under earth. Rafik stopped immediately. He stared down at the spot and pressed his foot gently against it. The ground felt firmer there. He tried again with the shovel, slower this time. The same hollow sound answered him. His chest tightened, and his mind began to race through possibilities. Maybe an old crate was buried there. Maybe a broken beam. Maybe something left behind by workers long ago. But the way the sound echoed made him feel that it was not random trash. He knelt and brushed the dirt aside with his hands. The soil came away in clumps. A flat surface appeared, darker than the ground around it. It was wood, smooth in some places, worn in others, but still strong. As he cleared more dirt, the shape became clear. It was a wooden hatch, set into the floor, fitted so closely that it looked planned and careful. In the middle was an iron ring, dull with age. Rafik stared at the hatch for a long time. His heart beat harder, and he could hear his own breathing. This was not something nature had made. Someone had built it. Someone had hidden it. The silo had not only been a storage place, it had been a cover. He pulled the iron ring. At first it did not move. He adjusted his grip and used his weight. The hatch gave a little, then opened with a slow creak that sounded like a long-held secret being forced into the light. Cold air rose from below, brushing his face. It smelled like stone, iron, and old dust. A narrow staircase led down into darkness. Rafik did not move at once. He stood there, holding the ring, feeling the cold air rise like a warning. He thought of his father's strict voice. He thought of his grandfather's silence. He realized that the silo had never been only about safety. It had been about hiding something, and about keeping questions away. Rafik took out a small lamp from his toolbox. He clicked it on and aimed the light down the steps. The beam showed stone walls that looked cut by hand, not natural. The stairs were solid, and the edges were worn as if many feet had used them long ago. That made his skin prickle, because it meant people had gone down there, and then they stopped. He told himself he only needed to look, just enough to know what he had found. He held the lamp tight and stepped down. Each step made a soft sound. The air grew cooler. The light showed more stone, more careful building. After a short descent, the stairs ended in a flat space. Rafik stood at the bottom and lifted the lamp higher. The room was larger than he expected, wide enough to feel like a hidden cellar. Wooden crates were stacked along one wall in neat lines. Metal shelves stood on the other side, holding jars, tools, and bundles wrapped in cloth. Everything was covered in dust, but nothing was scattered. It looked arranged, not abandoned in a hurry. The feeling was unsettling, because it meant someone had planned to return, or had planned for someone else to find it. Rafik walked slowly, careful where he placed his boots. He reached toward a cloth bundle and unwrapped it. Inside was a small wooden box, dark and smooth, with a carved symbol on top. The symbol was simple but unfamiliar, like a mark used for a private meaning. His fingers trembled as he opened the box. Inside were papers tied with a thin cord. The pages were yellow and fragile, written in careful handwriting. Rafik did not read every line yet, but he saw dates that made his eyes widen. The papers were about 70 years old. His throat went dry. At the bottom of the box was a photo. Raf, faded at the edges. Rafik lifted it gently, as if the image might break. In the photo, the old silo stood new and clean, its metal shining. In front of it were several people, dressed in older-style clothing. One man stood near the center, and Rafik felt a shock run through him. The man looked exactly like his grandfather. Rafik leaned closer, studying the face, the eyes, the shape of the jaw. It was not just similar. It was him. Yet the date on the papers suggested the photo was taken long before Rafik had been born. Rafik turned the photo slightly, and his lamplight caught something behind the group. Partly hidden near the silo base was a large object covered with a tarp, shaped in a way that did not match farm tools. It looked heavy, important, and out of place. Rafik swallowed and held the photo tighter. A deep unease settled in his stomach, the kind that comes when a person realizes the world is bigger than the story they were told. The farm was his home, but now it felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. Whatever had been hidden here for 70 years had been protected by silence, and Rafik had just broken that silence with his own hands. He looked back toward the stairs, then back at the crates, the shelves, and the box. The room felt like it was waiting for him to make the next choice. Rafik stayed still for a long moment, holding the photograph close to his chest. The quiet inside the hidden room felt heavy, like the air itself carried memory. The lamp in his hand shook slightly, and the light moved across the stone walls, making shadows stretch and shrink. He felt as if the room was watching him, waiting to see what he would do next. He placed the photograph carefully back inside the wooden box. His mind was full of questions, but he knew rushing would not help. He took a slow breath and began to explore the room more carefully. Each step echoed softly, reminding him how deep he was beneath the farm. The stone floor was smooth from age, not from nature. Human hands had shaped this place with care. Rafik moved toward the wooden crates stacked along the wall. They were all the same size and placed in straight lines. He touched one gently. The wood was dry but strong. When he opened the lid of the first crate, he found neatly folded cloths protecting metal objects. He lifted one out slowly. It was a tool, heavy and solid, unlike anything he used on the farm. The metal was dark, but not rusted, as if it had been cleaned and protected for years. He placed the tool back and closed the crate. The next crate held glass jars sealed with wax. Inside them were dark powders and small stones, each jar marked with symbols written by hand. Rafik could not read their meaning, but he felt they were important. This was not random storage. Everything had a purpose. As he walked toward the metal shelves, he noticed papers pinned to the wall above them. They were maps. Some showed the farmland as it was long ago, with lines and marks that did not exist now. Others showed roads and borders that had changed over time. Rafik traced one map with his finger, realizing that his farm once sat at the edge of something much larger than he ever knew. He felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride that his land carried history, fear that the history had been hidden for a reason. Rafik remembered his grandfather again. The old man had been quiet, strong, and careful with words. He had taught Rafik how to read the sky for rain and how to listen to the soil before planting. But there had always been a distance, a wall that questions could not cross. Now Rafik understood that the wall was built from secrets. He picked up one of the papers from the wooden box. The writing was neat and slow, written by someone who took time with each word. Rafik read a few lines. The words spoke of danger, of protection, and of a promise to keep something safe until the right time came. Dates were written again and again, spanning many years. Different names appeared, all unfamiliar, except one. His grandfather's name was written there. Rafik's chest tightened. This was not just history. This was family. He lowered himself onto a small wooden stool near the shelves. The weight of the discovery pressed down on him. He thought of the farm above him, quiet and simple, unaware of what lay beneath. He wondered how many times he had walked over this place without knowing. How many meals he had eaten, how many seasons he had planted, all while standing on a hidden truth. After some time, Rafik stood again. He knew he could not leave things as they were. He needed to understand more. Near the back of the room, partly hidden behind shelves, he noticed another door. It was smaller than the hatch above and made of thick wood reinforced with iron strips. His heart began to beat faster. He approached the door slowly. The handle was cold when he touched it. For a moment, he hesitated, listening. There was no sound beyond it, only silence. He turned the handle and pushed gently. The door opened inward without resistance. The space beyond was narrow and long, like a tunnel that had been widened into a room. Along the walls were more shelves, but these held fewer items. At the far end stood a large object covered with a heavy cloth. The shape beneath the cloth matched what he had seen in the photograph. Rafik walked toward it, each step filled with tension. He reached out and pulled the cloth back partway. The lamplight revealed smooth metal beneath, dark and solid. It was not a machine he recognized. It looked carefully built, with curved edges and markings etched into the surface. Rafik stepped back, his mind racing. Whatever this was, it was not meant for farming. It was something created with skill and purpose, something valuable enough to hide for 70 years. He covered the object again, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. His grandfather had protected this secret. Now it belonged to him. Suddenly, a faint sound reached his ears. It was soft, but clear. A vibration, like metal shifting above. Rafik froze. His lamplight trembled across the walls. He listened closely. The sound came again, stronger this time. Someone or something was moving near the silo above. Rafik's thoughts raced. No one else was supposed to be on the farm. The nearest neighbor lived far away. The sound could be the wind, or loose metal shifting. But the timing felt wrong. Too precise. Too sudden. He moved quickly back toward the stairs, careful not to make noise. He reached the bottom step and looked up. The hatch above was still open, letting in a thin beam of daylight. Dust drifted down slowly, disturbed by movement. Rafik stayed still, holding his breath. A shadow crossed the opening. His heart pounded. Someone was there. He quietly turned off the lamp and stepped back into the darkness. His mind filled with questions and fear. Did someone else know about the hidden room? Had the secret truly been kept safe all these years, or had it only been waiting to be found by more than one person? Above him, footsteps moved closer to the open hatch. The sound of metal scraping followed, as if someone was touching the remains of the silo. Rafik pressed himself against the stone wall, silent and alert. The farm he thought he knew was changing by the second. The secret beneath the silo was no longer just a story from the past. It was alive now, and it was pulling the present into its shadow. Rafik stood pressed against the cold stone wall, barely breathing. The darkness around him felt thick and close. The sounds from above grew clearer. A foot scraped against metal. Something heavy shifted near the opening of the hatch. Dust fell again in slow waves, touching Rafik's shoulders and hands. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, steadying his thoughts. He told himself to stay calm. Panic would only make noise. Noise would bring danger. The footsteps above paused. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then a low voice spoke, muffled by distance and stone. Rafik could not understand the words, but the tone carried caution. Whoever it was did not sound lost. They sounded careful. Rafik slowly moved his weight, inch by inch, away from the stairs. He remembered the smaller door near the back room. If he could reach it quietly, he might find another way out or a place to hide. He kept one hand on the wall, guiding himself through the dark, counting steps in his head as he went. Above, the voice spoke again. This time, it was closer. Light suddenly spilled down the staircase. The hatch was being opened wider. Rafik felt the light brush the edge of the room, touching crates and shelves. Shadows stretched and twisted. He stayed still, trusting the darkness to protect him. A figure began to descend the stairs. Rafik could hear slow steps, careful and measured. The person carried a light of their own, weaker than Rafik's lamp but bright enough to search. The stranger reached the bottom step and paused. The light moved across the room, stopping on the crates, the shelves, the stool. The beam lingered on the wooden box that Rafik had opened earlier. Rafik's chest tightened. The stranger stepped fully into the room. He was a man, older than Rafik, with a heavy jacket and worn boots. His face looked sharp in the moving light, marked by years of hard living. His eyes scanned the space with focus, not surprise. This was not the reaction of someone discovering the room for the first time. The man walked toward the shelves and touched one of the jars. He nodded to himself, as if confirming something. He moved to the wooden box and opened it. When he saw the photograph, his expression changed. His jaw tightened. Rafik realized then that the secret had not been forgotten. It had been watched. The man spoke quietly, as if to the room itself. He said the time had finally come. His voice carried a mix of relief and worry. Rafik did not move. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to react. The man turned and walked toward the back room where the covered object stood. He pulled the cloth away fully this time. The metal beneath reflected the light in soft curves. The man placed his hand on it with care, almost respect. He spoke again, mentioning a promise and a duty passed down through years. Rafik understood then that his grandfather had not been alone in this secret. Others had shared the burden. A sudden sound echoed above. The wind pushed through the broken silo walls, making metal creak loudly. The noise startled both men. The stranger looked back toward the stairs. Rafik used the moment. He moved silently toward the smaller door and slipped through it. Inside was narrow, but it led to a short passage that curved upward. The air grew warmer as he climbed. The walls here were rougher, less finished. This passage had been made in haste or later than the main room. Rafik climbed slowly, careful not to disturb loose stones. His hands shook, but he forced them to stay steady. After several steps, he felt a draft of fresh air. He followed it, heart pounding. The passage ended at a hidden opening covered by wooden boards and straw. Rafik pushed gently and found himself beneath an old storage shed near the edge of the field. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the walls. He stayed low, listening. From the silo, the stranger's voice echoed faintly, calling out, asking if anyone was there. Rafik remained silent. He crawled out of the shed and moved through tall grass, keeping distance between himself and the silo. When he reached the tree line, he stopped and looked back. The silo stood broken and open, no longer a silent watcher. It was a door now, and the past was walking through it. Rafik spent the rest of the day hiding among the trees, watching the farm from a distance. The stranger came and went from the silo several times. Once, another person arrived, younger, carrying tools and bags. They worked with purpose, as if following a plan prepared long ago. As evening fell, Rafik made a decision. He could not run from this. The secret beneath his land was tied to his family, to his grandfather's choices, and now to him. Hiding would only leave him powerless. He needed answers, and he needed control. When night came, Rafik returned to the farmhouse quietly. He locked the doors and gathered what he needed. Old notebooks, family records, and his grandfather's personal box. He spread everything on the table and began to search. Hours passed as he read and sorted. Near midnight, he found it. A folded letter hidden inside a book cover. The paper was thin and fragile. The handwriting was familiar. It was written by his grandfather. The letter spoke of fear, of a time when the land had been caught between powerful forces. It spoke of an object that could not be destroyed, only hidden. It spoke of a group sworn to protect it, even from future generations, until the right person stood on the land again. The last line made Rafik's hands tremble. It said that when the silo fell, the choice would belong to the farmer. Rafik looked out the window toward the dark fields. The farm was quiet, but it no longer felt peaceful. The choice had arrived, and the past had finally reached out to claim its future. Rafik did not sleep that night. He sat at the wooden table, the letter from his grandfather resting in front of him. The lamp above cast a soft yellow light, and shadows moved across the walls as the flame shifted. Outside, the farm lay quiet, but inside Rafik felt a storm of thoughts. The words from the letter repeated in his mind again and again. The choice would belong to the farmer. He wondered what kind of choice his grandfather had meant. The letter spoke of protection and waiting, but it did not say what should be done next. Rafik felt the weight of the land more strongly than ever. This was not just soil and crops anymore. It was trust passed through time. As the sky began to lighten, Rafik made a plan. He would not confront the strangers without knowledge. He would observe, learn, and prepare. He hid the letter safely and stepped outside as dawn broke. The air was cool, and birds began to call from the trees. Everything looked normal, yet nothing felt the same. Rafik walked the edge of the field, keeping the silo in sight. From behind a line of bushes, he watched the activity. The older man returned, joined again by the younger one. They carried boxes and tools, moving in and out of the silo with care. They did not rush. They worked like people who had done this before. Rafik noticed something important. They avoided certain areas of the ground and stepped only in specific places. This meant there were more hidden paths, more knowledge beneath the surface. The thought made Rafik uneasy, but it also sharpened his focus. These men knew the past, but Rafik owned the present. Later that morning, the men left. A truck drove away slowly, leaving dust behind. Rafik waited until the sound faded. Then he moved. He approached the silo carefully, alert to every sound. The broken metal wall stood open, exposing the entrance below. Rafik paused at the hatch, listening. There was no movement. He took a deep breath and went down the stairs again. The hidden room felt different now. The dust had been disturbed, and some crates had been moved. The cloth covering the metal object was partly folded back. Rafik stepped closer and studied it carefully. The surface was cool and smooth. The markings looked like a language made of lines and shapes, simple yet powerful. Rafik did not touch it. He remembered the promise in the letter. Protect. Wait. Choose wisely. He searched the room again, this time looking for more clues. Behind a shelf, he found another bundle of papers. These were newer than the others, written by different hands across decades. They spoke of meetings held in secret, of watchers who came and went, and of rules that could not be broken. One rule stood out. The landowner must always remain unaware, until the silo no longer stands. Rafik understood then. The fall of the silo was the signal. It meant the old protection had ended. The secret could no longer stay buried. As he climbed back up, Rafik felt a sense of calm settle over him. Fear was still there, but now it had direction. He knew what he had to do. That afternoon, Rafik visited the town. He spoke with old neighbors and listened more than he talked. He asked gentle questions about his grandfather, about the farm, about the years after the war. Most people remembered little, but a few shared fragments. They spoke of strangers who passed through long ago, of meetings held late at night, of the silo always being watched from a distance. One old man told Rafik something that stayed with him. He said the farm had always been a place where important things rested, even if no one understood why. When Rafik returned home, the sun was low. He saw fresh tire marks near the silo. The men had come back. This time, Rafik did not hide. He walked openly toward the silo. His steps were steady, his back straight. When he reached the opening, the older man looked up sharply. The younger one froze. There was a long silence. The older man spoke first. He said Rafik was not supposed to know yet. His voice carried both respect and regret. Rafik answered calmly. He said the silo was his, the land was his, and the choice was his now. He held up the letter. The older man's face changed when he saw it. The man nodded slowly. He said Rafik's grandfather had been a good guardian. He said the secret had been kept safe longer than anyone expected. He also said the world outside was changing, and what was hidden could not stay hidden forever. They sat together near the silo as the sky darkened. The older man explained more of the past. He spoke of a time when powerful people feared what this object represented. It was not a weapon, but a symbol of control and balance. If used wrongly, it could bring harm. If protected, it could prevent it. Rafik listened without interrupting. When the story ended, the older man asked what Rafik would choose. Rafik looked across his fields, the land that had fed his family for generations. He thought of his grandfather's quiet strength and his father's hard work. He thought of the future, of children who might one day run across this soil without fear. He said the object would remain hidden, but not buried in silence. He would protect it, but he would also prepare the right people to understand it. Secrets rotted when left alone. Responsibility did not. The older man smiled for the first time. He said the choice was the right one. As night settled over the farm, Rafik felt something shift. The past had reached him, but it no longer controlled him. One final part of the journey remained, and it would decide how the story truly ended. Rafik stood alone near the silo after the men had left. The night air was calm, and the stars above seemed brighter than before. The farm felt different, not lighter, not heavier, but awake. For the first time since he uncovered the hidden room, Rafik felt that the land accepted his choice. He walked back to the farmhouse and sat on the steps. The fields stretched quietly in front of him. He thought about the future and how it could change if he made the wrong move. He also thought about how much harm silence could cause when fear ruled decisions. His grandfather had done what he believed was right for his time. Now it was Rafik's turn to do the same for his own. The next morning, Rafik began carefully. He returned to the hidden room with a clear purpose. He documented everything he saw using simple notes and sketches. He did not move the object or disturb the crates more than needed. He cleaned the space gently, treating it with respect. This place was no longer a secret cave. It was a responsibility. Over the following days, Rafik met again with the older man and his group. They spoke openly this time. They shared knowledge passed down through generations. They explained that the object was designed long ago by thinkers who wanted balance, not power. It was meant to guide decisions, not control people. Over time, fear had turned it into something hidden rather than understood. Rafik listened carefully. He asked questions. He challenged ideas when they felt outdated. The group respected him for that. They began to see him not as a farmer who stumbled into a secret, but as a guardian chosen by time and land. Together, they formed a new agreement. The object would remain where it was, protected by the land and by understanding. Rafik would allow only a small group of trusted people to learn its purpose. No copies. No rumors. No rush. The goal was clarity, not control. Weeks passed, and the farm slowly returned to its rhythm. Crops grew. Animals grazed. The silo was fully dismantled, leaving only open sky where it once stood. The land looked younger without it, as if a burden had been lifted. Neighbors noticed the change. They said Rafik seemed calmer, more focused. Some asked about the silo. Rafik answered simply. He said it was old and unsafe, and it was time to let it go. That truth was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Rafik walked the edge of the field where his grandfather once stood. He imagined the old man watching, quiet and proud. Rafik spoke softly, thanking him for the trust, for the strength, and for leaving a path rather than a command. Later that night, Rafik placed the letter back into its hiding place, not underground, but inside a wooden box in his home. It was no longer a secret meant to stay buried. It was a reminder meant to guide. Years later, the farm became known for something else. Not secrets or hidden rooms, but wisdom. People came to Rafik for advice, not knowing why they trusted him so easily. He listened more than he spoke. He taught patience, balance, and respect for the land. The object beneath the farm remained untouched, yet its purpose lived on through Rafik's choices. The world changed slowly, but wisely, in small ways that mattered. When Rafik grew old, he chose someone new. Not a family member by blood, but by character. He shared the story carefully, just as his grandfather once had not. He explained the past, the mistake of silence, and the power of responsibility. The land accepted the new guardian, just as it had accepted Rafik. The secret that once hid beneath a rusted silo was no longer a burden. It became a lesson passed with care. And the farm, simple and quiet, continued to grow food, memories, and trust, proving that some of the greatest changes begin beneath ordinary ground, guided by ordinary people who choose to do what is right.